Good evening. I'm John Bailey. This is People to be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And tonight, you've got, on my immediate left, Lenore Friedlaender, Vice President of the Service Employees Union International 32BJ. Welcome to the program. And on my far left, Thomas Carey, President of the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Party. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, my pleasure. And we are here today to discuss the labor movement locally as you see it, and sort of taking a look at after next week's elections. We don't know what the results will be, but we can, as any good pundits do, can speculate. Right? Exactly. Now, we had got to discussing, Ms. Friedlander, the action this week by the workers at Google and also by teachers' unions across America as far as unions standing up to management. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Thought it would be great to start off just with a reflection on yesterday's action around the world by Google workers who walked out to protest sexual harassment and discrimination in their workplace. And one of the interesting things about the demands they raised was that they want to have a workers' representative on Google's board. They not only are responding to very real problems in the workplace that have to do with discrimination and harassment, and to have a real process so that they can demand a culture change and have a culture change inside the workplace. But they also see that it's important for workers to have their own voice, to workers to have an independent voice, and raise that to a global level. So congratulations to the Google workers and to the employer, for being open to listening to the workers, and we look forward to following the story and seeing where this goes, and to find ways to support Google workers in their efforts to improve the conditions in their workplace.
I think it's something to watch. Google being one of America's biggest companies, like Lenore says, I applaud the workers and Google for both, taking a good look at what's happening. In today's society, there's just so many things going on that we really have to watch. The sexual discrimination, the Me Too, the whole movement. It's something that we're gonna watch. It's gonna be interesting.
How do you see that changing? How can it change?
I guess more awareness, by employees and companies as well. I mean, every time you turn on the news, it's another case. So I think the awareness is out there. How we're gonna change it, I guess it's up to every individual. But there's more of an awareness today.
Right, and you had mentioned the ability of workers to have problems investigated thoroughly with intent. To really
Absolutely, and one of the good things about unionized workplaces is that workers frequently have the courage to speak up. There are protections for workers who speak up. There are protections for workers who are victimized by sexual harassment, by discrimination, and we actually can bargain language into our union contracts to provide training, to increase awareness, and to make sure that people who speak up get the allegations investigated fairly, and that there is a real consequence for people who do not treat any employee fairly. So that's something really important that many people don't know about unions, that we have language in many of our union contracts to protect workers against various kinds of discrimination and harassment in the workplace.
Well, in fact, when you got the jobs back for the employees with the outfit in White Plains that changed cleaning contractors and they fired your union workers, you got the back. That was because of the language in the Westchester County law and your contract, right?
Exactly, and New York State has passed a law that mandates training. And we are bargaining language into our union contracts to incorporate that training and to allow our labor management training funds to provide training that meets or exceeds those standards. So it's something that examples like what the Google workers did yesterday gives people the courage to speak out, to stand up, to express their concerns, and it was so awesome to see women and men out there, that this isn't just a women's issue, this is an all workers issue, this is an everybody issue. And that was another thing from
It's
the
the what
pictures
kind
that
of
we
person
saw.
you are issue, whether you're Latino or Muslim or Indian or whatever. People have to be respected for their achievements and what they do.
And one of the other things that I just add about unionized workplaces is our contracts require employers to pay men and women the same pay rate for the same job. And so that's
What a concept.
what a concept.
right.
So, you know, that's something that does not exist in our society overall, but it does exist in every union's contract, that if you are, there's a wage rate for a job classification. And it doesn't say women this and men that. It says, you know, a cleaner, a plumber.
How old is that?
How old is
How far
that?
does it go back, that
What do you think,
statute?
Not that far.
No, that's recent.
The New York State law?
Yeah.
Very recent. But
Yeah.
in our union contracts, that concept that there's a wage rate for, you know, that
Quality has been.
equality based on a job classification.
I see. And you also mentioned just briefly how proud you are of the teachers' unions across America actually lobbying for the children they teach and better pay.
You know, another trend in the labor movement we saw in the last year or so were teachers who were, you know, really had the courage to step up, to speak out, to shine a spotlight on the conditions and the working conditions and the conditions in schools and the lack of fair funding for public education in, you know, red states and a lot of red states throughout the country. And that also was really inspiring to see that. And it was,
I believe it was responded to by the states.
it
in
was,
some
but
ways.
in many states, teachers rallied in their state capitals. They did sit-ins, they did protests, they didn't do quiet lobbying. They did vocal, visible, and somewhat disruptive actions to really shine a spotlight, and that brought a sense of urgency. And they were able to tell the stories not only of their own conditions, but also of the kinds of the conditions for the students and the state of the buildings and the equipment in schools.
Right. Well, let's change gears here for a moment. As a labor union, how do you view what can be expected after the midterm elections? If Republicans retain control of both houses, if the Democratic Party, by some stretch of the imagination, wins both? What do you think?
Well, you know, I think what we've seen, the labor movement has seen both red and blue. We have been deceived by Democrats and Republicans. So it's going to be interesting to see who takes control. I don't honestly see a complete flip happening Tuesday night. Some seats will be lost, some will be gained. But it's important for the labor movement. We got behind candidates that really stand up for labor. We've been collectively working so hard for candidates and we interview them, we vet them, and we ask them many labor questions. You know, what are their true beliefs in the labor movement? And they're the candidates we get behind. So it will be interesting Tuesday night to see what happens. But regardless, Republican, Democrat, we've been crossing the aisle as well, you know, with some of the elected officials. There's some Republicans that help us. There's some Democrats that help us.
But how can you trust them? Aren't they just giving you lip service?
Sometimes they do, and then we let them know in the next election. You know, we let them know, you know, if you don't stand with us, then we're not going to stand with you any longer.
Yeah. What are the issues you expect businesses to continue to contest with your union and organized labor in general, regardless of which party is successful? What is the business?
I'll say on the private sector side, what we see a lot of is, you know, they're always going after prevailing wage, right? Prevailing wage should be recognized as it helps everybody. It's a level playing field where everybody can get the same pay on public works projects. You know, it's proven effective, and it's a level playing field. So it doesn't matter, union, non-union, it doesn't matter. One of the other things we see is probably project labor agreements. The building trades always looks to to put a project labor agreement in place if prevailing wage doesn't work, right? So it means that everybody that bids the job will be union, and it's protections for the business as well as labor standpoint.
Do you see businesses going after that?
I think they'd be wise to embrace the project labor agreements on a lot of projects.
Are America's unions on the same page with each other in dealing with these types of issues in perhaps a stronger fashion?
Absolutely. What I've seen over I've been very excited as the new president of the Labor Council. What I see now is firefighters standing with nurses, plumbers and steam fitters standing with teachers, nurses standing with painters and carpenters. Everybody's united now. You know, I've been involved in many rallies and many strikes with the CWA workers, where you look around and there's elected officials standing in lines with us now, and it's a united workforce. Everybody's realizing that when labor gets pushed, we push right back.
I see. Lenore, we were speaking before the program about a new effort of your union to point out the spending inadequacies and discrepancies between various hospitals in the area for the same procedures. Could you speak to that?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that many unions do is we bargain with our employers for health benefits for our members. This is in the private sector. And we, like many other unions, have established health and welfare funds, benefit funds that are jointly managed by our employers in our industry together with the union to provide cost-effective, high-quality benefits. And one of the things that we've noticed in New York City, in the metro area, is that all hospitals don't charge the same amount, and that we have undertaken a kind of unique campaign to draw attention to that and put a spotlight on the fact that there are certain hospitals, such as New York Presbyterian, who have practices that are way out of sync with the other hospitals. And so we have started an effort to let our members know and to let the public know that there appears to be wide price discrepancies, and there should be fair hospital pricing. We are not
Same price for the same procedure.
There should be an acceptable range for the same procedure, because otherwise what happens is we end up giving a lot of money to a hospital that's charging 2 or 3 times as much for a similar procedure. So that's a brand new thing that we've done to try to manage the cost of health care, and that's an issue for our members as well as for our employers. We bargain with our employers to pay for health care, and so we want to make sure that there's a reasonable cost, that we maintain high quality benefits at a reasonable cost, and it's a national problem, the cost of health care. So this is one approach that we've just started.
Yeah, you were able to do that in your recent contract with the Westchester Property Owners Association?
So the residential, the Building and Realty Institute of Westchester and the Mid-Hudson Valley, the BRI, yes, we recently successfully concluded an agreement for our resident workers in apartment buildings and residential buildings.
You didn't lose benefits, you got an extraordinary pay increase.
We ended up with an agreement we're really proud of that moves our members ahead, that protects the health and the retirement benefits, and that works for the employers as well, and the residents of.
Why do you think they settled?
I think they settled because they recognize that that a settlement, being able to reach a negotiated settlement, was the best option. That the market, the economics in the industry right now were such that we could reach a settlement that provided good wage increases and the money necessary for our benefits. And
so it's about 3%, right?
A year, yeah.
A year. That's 9% over 3 years.
Yeah, it's a 4-year agreement. And
4 years.
4-year agreement.
Right. So your union, the Service Employees Union International, is, I believe, 70% minority?
Our international union is a very diverse union, as well as our local union. And we, in our 32BJ local union, We are majority immigrants and people born in other countries, and it could be East or Western Europe, Central or Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, or Africa. But we are a majority of immigrant members, speak a lot of different languages.
Yeah. Have you found that the pressure on Latino employees has increased, or the anti-immigrant tone of the administration that has put more pressure on minorities in general?
The current environment of fear-mongering, of hate, of the attempt, to the attacks on immigrants and Latinos, it's not limited. There was the attempted Muslim ban, are divisive, are create fear and distrust among members, and that's not, and in the larger community, and that's something our union has been super active on, standing up for the rights of immigrant workers, and trying to bring people together across all of those divides. We believe that we're stronger together, that we work hard to create an open and welcoming place for every worker in our union, regardless of where they're born, and regardless of what language they speak, what religion they practice, who their parents are, or who they are.
Right. Has the Supreme Court configuration and the new conservative appointees put previous union gains at risk in the future?
What I see, I'm sure you're regarding the Janus decision.
Yes.
What I think has happened with the Janus decision, I honestly think it's going to backfire for big business, right? And Mr. Janus himself, who was found out to be, somewhat of a fraud, he was backed by big business, right? So what I've seen is it's only made us stronger. I'm very proud of all the labor organizations, whether it's private, public sector. We've become more of a united front because of the Janus decision. I think a lot of members
That's
aren't
about
going
the union dues not being required.
Exactly, no representation, no dues. But I think our members are a lot more intellectual. They take a big look at the big picture, and they see that they understand they need representation. As Lenore just stated, with some of the different things going on with some of the minority challenges, let's say, right? They look up and say, without representation, where are we going to be? And they realize that it's a good thing. The Janus decision, I just kind of take a look back and I say, our members are a lot better than that. So far, I haven't seen any big changes. We made a lot of changes early on before the decision came out. We were ready for it. We embraced it, and we got very prepared for it. So far, so good. But
And how about enabling arbitration as being the first thing you have to agree to when you join a company?
yeah,
That decision is horrible because we all know a class action suit is much more effective if it's a widespread abuse. And so how are the unions adjusting to that?
well, so far we haven't seen anything yet, on that front. So we'll face it when we get to it. But so far it's been,
You found the companies around the local area aren't really pursuing that?
not yet.
Not yet.
I don't know.
It's, in our unionized workplaces, we have procedures and a process to engage our employers when there are widespread problems. So it's a little bit different in a union workplace than in a non-union workplace. So I think the rights of unions to form, workers still have the right to form a union, and having a union in the workplace is one, the best policy or practice or best thing you could do to not only lift yourself out of poverty and to move forward, but to actually work towards having a decent life and having the wages and benefits, having a voice.
Are you looking to try and organize companies that aren't union now?
Absolutely, that's part of the mission that all unions share, is to grow and make sure every worker has a chance to be part of a union in their workplace.
How are you planning to do that?
We're going to ramp up our organizing efforts. I belong to the United Association, which is the United Association of Plumbers and Steamfitters, HVAC service workers. So my international has ramped up the efforts. They put on organizing blitzes. They reach out to different communities, whether it's small suburbs or cities, and they'll send all of our organizers throughout the United States. They'll group up and they'll go hit all these different sites, and try to tell the workers, unions aren't so bad. There's that little fear out there with some small companies that if you join a union, you're going to be left out in the cold. Our efforts are bigger today than they ever were, and they should be now because there's so much work going on right now. Mm-hmm. The economy's booming, so now's the time to really organize. Get out there and let these people know. They're welcome.
And in an environment where there's increasing income inequality, where there are tax breaks for the wealthiest, how are workers going to get our fair share if we don't join together, if we don't band together, if we don't do what the Google workers or the teachers or security officers or airport workers or construction workers are doing and join together, because there's power and there's strength in numbers, and that's the basic message of unions. We can make a difference. We can increase our voice and power and our share of the pie if we join together.
Have you analyzed the effect of the new tax law that is now in effect on union workers?
I don't know how it's, public sector versus private sector, how that's all going to pan out in the end. I don't know how.
You can't tell until the returns are filed and everybody
this year,
screams.
Yeah.
Yes.
April 15th will tell a lot.
Yes. Labor benefits are under attack. Pensions, medical benefits particularly. Can labor hold these benefits as you did in your current new contract with the property owners? I mention this because here in Westchester, city governments have taken aim at making union members pay more of the cost of benefits. It's the new idea that has been. What do you think?
Well, for my local in particular, we pay close to $13,000 a year. Each member pays for health and welfare benefits. So it's very difficult in a collective bargaining agreement during negotiations to have to bargain for the health and welfare benefits. It's very difficult. It becomes more difficult. And I think for Lenore's case, with her members, they're paying more and more. And I think that might have been what happened in this case in your most recent contract. For us, it's very difficult. It was never an issue during collective bargaining to talk about health and welfare benefits, but now it's become that 500-pound gorilla in the room.
And our government's pursuing for you to take more, pay in more and more of this rising expense?
Not so much the government. That would probably be more Lenore's question on the public sector side.
Right.
So I think there is a real difference in this case in public and private sector. So the governments aren't involved in bargaining with private sector unions. They're not a party in the negotiations. Okay. We bargain with the landlords or the contractors, the actual private companies who employ our members. And in that situation, some unions have agreed to the members paying a portion towards their health care, premium sharing. In our union, we do not have premium sharing, and we work hard with our employers, as I was saying, to try to manage the cost of health care so that the cost increases aren't outrageous and they're less than the national average. But for public sector unions, part of the reason that many city or county governments are, in a position to don't have a lot of money for the wages and benefits for the workers is because we haven't pursued an economic policy that supports a growing economic, vibrant community. And from the labor movement's perspective, a part of the solution is raising the minimum wage, making sure there are laws passed like paid sick days, making sure that workers can freely form unions and raise the wages and benefits. Because if people get paid more, We're in a consumer society. They're going to buy more, they're going to spend more. That's going to generate a larger tax base and a tax revenue rather than tax giveaways to corporations. There's another approach, which is pay people more. And that's a way to create sufficient revenue for the local governments so that they don't have this horrible choice of how to bargain with the public unions, that there's a joint approach that says we need to make sure that we have vibrant local economies.
Now, we have about a minute and a half left. Is there anything you want to speak to on the issues facing labor ahead?
I think the one thing I did want to discuss today was approved apprenticeship programs. It's a very big issue. What we see a lot of in the private sector unions is contractors will be out there bidding on these large development projects, and they propose that they have an approved apprenticeship program, which when we do a little research, we find out they may have rented out a little suite on Martine Avenue somewhere, and you go to that suite and it's vacant 6 days a week. You find out these apprentices were never getting wage increases or training increases. They remained at that level, where many of the building trades unions do a phenomenal apprenticeship program, whether it's the steam fitters, the plumbers, the painters, the sheet metal workers. They do a 5-day-a-week program for these students. My local itself, we do 35-hour courses. It's 7 weeks. The kids come in, they learn. The next year when they come back, they get a pay increase.
Like the trade schools used to do.
Exactly.
Yes. And
I just think that the schools should be more aware of letting the kids know that the building trades, construction projects are a career, not just a job.
Is there a number they can call to have more information?
I mean, it's usually posted on the websites, but they can reach out to any one of the building trades throughout Westchester and Putnam counties. But there's some phenomenal projects out there, and now more than ever, we want these kids to get involved. It's not just a job.
Absolutely.
It's a career.
Well, Lenore Friedlaender and Tom Carey, you have been heard. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
John Bailey, good night.